We have breaking news now. Russian President Vladimir Putin is calling Europe's amendments to the plan to end the war in Ukraine unacceptable. President Trump's top envoy is meeting with Putin in Moscow today. Now Putin's accusing European leaders of sabotaging peace efforts. Let's bring in foreign correspondent Tom Soufi-Burridge and ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy for more. Hi, Tom. What's the latest?
Yeah, we've had some pretty predictable talking points from Russian President Vladimir Putin to reporters prior to his meeting with US envoy Steve Witkoff. I mean, basically, Putin has been trying to blame Europe for what he says is sort of sabotaging the peace negotiations by making demands which would be absolutely unacceptable from a Russian perspective. Whereas, of course, Ukraine and the Europeans would say that Russia's demands have been unacceptable from the very beginning and only really amount to a capitulation from Ukraine if Ukraine were to accept them. He's also been pushing the idea that Russia is making progress on the battlefield, claiming that Russia now has full control over two new cities, Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, which Russia has been trying to take for the best part of a year. The Ukrainian military still says it is fighting in those cities to some extent, but clearly Russia has been moving forward in those areas over the last few days or weeks. And also, he has been making threats. I mean, he was asked about Ukrainian attacks on the Shadow Fleet. These are oil tankers which are not registered as Russian, but they are moving Russian sanctioned oil around the world, and so it can sell the oil and bypass sanctions. And he threatened that Russia could attack commercial vessels pertaining to European countries if those type of attacks continue. So it was quite a bellicose speech, but I think there were predictable themes in there, themes that probably the Russian president will be pushing with Steve Witkoff: Russia's power on the battlefield, or perceived power, and also the idea that these European demands in negotiations are completely unacceptable for Moscow.
So, Mick, what do you make of Putin's response here?
Well, Diane, as Tom said, it was totally predictable. Anything that's acceptable to Ukraine is likely not, and I think we just found out, going to be acceptable to Russia, especially when they're still making incremental gains on the battle space. They don't care about the level of casualties they take to do so. As long as they're moving in that direction, they're not likely going to stop. So really, the only thing that's going to change the trajectory of this back and forth writing plans that go nowhere is to increase the consequences for Russia to continue this fight, which means the secondary sanction bill in the Senate, releasing frozen Russian monies to Ukraine, and approving advanced weapon systems that aren't currently being used by Ukraine for Ukraine. That's the only things that's going to change it. Simply redrafting one that's more favorable to Russia and then one that's more favorable to Ukraine is not going to go anywhere, as Russia believes they can still gain from continuing this unlawful war.
Mick, what does this mean for the negotiations moving forward?
I think it means that there needs to be a trajectory that changes this back and forth, which is going nowhere. So Europe should do, in my opinion, more of the negotiations. They're clearly more aligned with Ukraine than some of the other advisors for the United States. They need to become involved. And it's not as a spoiler. They're part of NATO. NATO is very concerned about an aggressive Russia taking more territory if they feel like this was a successful campaign in Ukraine. So they have a lot at stake here, and they've also offered a lot. They have offered this coalition of the willing to be the force that goes in during any ceasefire, during any negotiation, to ensure that it stays a ceasefire. So they have stepped up. That needs to change a bit. We need to have more input from them, and obviously more input from Ukraine.
Tom Soufi-Burridge, Mick Mulroy, thank you both.